Hi, I'm Anthony from Cindy Backyard Veggies. Out in the patch this morning. I've got a lot of gardening to do today to continue working on my spring plantings. I've raised a lot of seedlings and they are at that size they need to go out into the garden, but I am having a few difficulties at the moment, just not having enough space in my patch to plant them out. So today I'm going to be doing a bit of planning around what I'm going to be planting where for my spring and summer garden. But before I do that, I'll go show you how my seedlings are looking at the moment. I've got my seeds sunning outside at the moment, and if I bring you in closer to show you how my seeds are looking, and as we come closer you can see these are my capsicum seedlings. These are now 6 weeks old. The issue is I'm still losing a few to slugs, so I've added a few slug pellets to really hold them at bay, and it seems to be working. I haven't lost any more since. Coming across, these are my eggplants, and I potted these up last week and they are ready to go, and I've actually got a space for them in the garden. I need to plant them out. They're looking perfect at the moment. Again, I lost a few earlier on because of slugs, but they should be fine now. I'm going to be planting 6 out of those. Jalapenos looking really good. Here you go, perfect looking seeds. These ones are ready to go. You've got to be careful when you're looking at after seedlings at this size. They do get impacted by aphids. Just going to make sure there's no aphids attacking them, and they look like they're fairly clean at the moment, so that's great. Corn seedlings, these germinated these were planted 2 weeks ago in my previous video, and look, it was a bit touch and go with the germination. I will get better germination now that it's starting to warm up, but I do have enough seedlings here to plant out a patch, and I'll plant them on my southern bed this week. My warm season lettuce, cos lettuce, is looking really good. This is go out. Unfortunately, our pet rabbit got out and ate half the seedlings, but that's what you get with having pets. But these will be planted out today as well, and I'm looking at planting these adjacent to the silver beet. With my tomatoes, these seedlings are still looking better and better every week. This is the Thunder variety that was planted out last week, and you can just see over a space of a week they've added on another 10 centimeters of length, which is perfect. These are now perfect to be planted out. Now I don't have much space left in my garden for these tomatoes, so I'm going to try to find people to give them away to. But I've got 2 other varieties of tomatoes I need to plant out, and this is my other slicing tomato. This is called Farah, and this is my first year planting this variety, just giving it a go to see how it works in my patch. And I've got my Sugarino seedlings, Sugarino cherry tomato seedlings. Again, they're all looking the perfect size to go out. They need to be planted out as well. And on the bush bean front, had my first round germinate. Now they've been a bit slow because obviously it's not optimal temperature yet for them to germinate, but I was able to germinate 30 seedlings all up here. These will be planted out next to the tomatoes that I planted out last week, and I'll probably be able to get at least 1 or 2 rows of beans, so that's fine. I've actually planted another tray of beans, so they'll be planted out in late September in the garden, but these would be great to get an early start. Now that I've raised a lot of those seedlings, the issue that's coming up now is actually trying to find a spot in my patch to plant out these seedlings. When I'm planting my garden, I'm always thinking 3 months ahead as to what I'll be planting in these bed after the current crop, and making sure that when I plan my garden, that turnover of plants happens at that right time and the space is free up for the new plantings. So although we're in spring now, in late August, I am looking forward to January, what I'm going to be planting in these spots, and trying to plant my garden around that. So looking over to the bed, this is my main garden bed. This is my west facing plot, and just for a bit of context, north is to the left, so I get all day sun pretty much across this bed, especially in summer. What I've done here is I've started with my tomato plantings that I planted here last week, and the idea in this patch is that I want to plant corn in this bed in mid-January. So whatever I plant in this bed needs to be pulled out in time for January, so I can plant my corn. And then after that, I'll plant my brassicas in mid-March, early April in this spot. So the plan for this garden is I will be planting more tomatoes and cucumbers and capsicums in this spot. But the reason why I'm doing that is because I will be pulling out my tomatoes in December, early January as the fruit flies come in. So looking at what I'm doing here, I'm looking at planting my capsicums in this row here. That will give a bit more space to the tomatoes to grow. Then I'm going to be planting 2 more rounds of tomatoes here, and potentially in this spot, although I've jumped the gun and planted some radishes here, I'm looking at planting this season's cucumbers in this spot here. And then as the cauliflower gets cleared, I'll plant beans. Now the idea of that planting is that everything will be pulled out within 3 months to that mid-January time. So I'm going to start working in this corner of the bed. I'm going to actually remove all these cabbages and start turning over the soil, adding my compost and amendments, and I'll be planting the capsicums, a row of capsicums and 2 rows of tomatoes. I'm going to be harvesting all the red cabbage in this patch. This variety is called Red Queen, and it actually does produce a really nice head. It's not as big as the green varieties that I've planted, but they're really sweet, really nice eating. And I had about 2 rows here and planted out in early May, and so they've been doing great. Look, I've had problems with slugs and snails, but generally speaking, you can just usually wash that off. But generally speaking, a pretty good producer. Finished at harvest, and I end up with 8 heads of cabbage. Look, this is great. Just got to clean them up and get rid of all those slugs, and I'll hand them out to family and friends. So the happy days plants are out. I am going to go through now and turn over that soil, remove a lot of that garden waste, and then get ready to start planting. So just finished preparing this bed, and I've just turned over the soil just to break up the clogs and remove all that garden waste. Then I've added 2 barrel loads of homemade compost on the bed, and I've added a little bit of chicken manure pellets and some dolomite lime, and also some sulfate of potash, and I've just sprinkled it over the bed, and I've dumped that into the soil in that top layer, and then I have just raked the bed just to level it out. What I'm going to do now is just set out these rows. What I'm thinking of doing is coming away from the tomatoes. I'm going to come across 80 centimeters just to give the tomatoes a bit of space to grow and I don't outcrowd the capsicums. I'm going to put a row of capsicums straight down the middle here, and then I'm going to come across probably another 60 centimeters and start my 2 rows for my tomatoes. I'm actually going to take that first row really hard up against that those radishes, and then come in 60 centimeters or 80 centimeters at least, and that way I can give the tomatoes ample space and also give the capsicums ample space. I'll be using my hoe to do up the rows, very similar to the way I did for the tomatoes last week. And I'll set out those rows and I'll go start planting my seedlings. Over in my first row here, I'm going to plant my capsicums, and these are my seedlings. They're actually quite good. I did lose a few, unfortunately, to slugs, but I have 7 seedlings in total. I was trying to grow Harley at the start of the season, which is a big red blocky type capsicum, but the seeds that I had were unfortunately too old. So I've got a new one. This is a yellow blocky capsicum, and I will share the name at the bottom of this video. Actually, it's just passed me up my mind now, but I was able to get 7 seedlings in total. I'm going to set them out. Ideally I'd set out capsicums at that 30 to 40 centimeter spacings, but because I've only got 1 row, I might be able to give them a bit more space. Like I plant my tomatoes, just going to do a small hole. You're not trying to plant these deeply, so it's not about getting them too deep, but just giving enough space to see if I can plant the plant root ball and all. So try not to take the dirt off it, but oh, see how I go with this one. There you go, perfect. Oh, it's just falling apart, that's no problem. Bring the soil back onto the... I do like to plant my capsicums at that 4 leaf stage. These are at the moment, they do look a bit small, but they will thrive once they're out in the garden, especially if it's starting to warm up. The last few days has been mid-20s here in Sydney, so these will do really, really well. And again, in my area, I don't get frosts, so these should be okay from any late frosts. But if in your area, if you do get frosts, I would suggest to hold off till, you know, end of next month, end of September. In Sydney, I like to plant my seedlings fairly early. Again, from last year's experience, capsicums can have a real problem with fruit fly strike, and I lost all my crop last year once late December hit. So this year I decided to plant a little bit earlier, get them out here just before September. Hopefully I'll have most of it harvested, and then I'm planning for this season to start a second round of seedlings in that November, December time for planting out later in the season. So I'll get that second round planted out in mid-January, and hopefully I'm harvesting fruit fly free fruit in March, April. Coming over to the other 2 rows, and I'm going to be planting, these are my tomato seedlings I'm going to be planting. This variety is called Farah. It's a new variety for my garden. I have never planted this before, but it comes from another commercial seed supplier, and I've got a strong preference for commercial varieties to try in my patch. So I'm going to give these a go this year, and hopefully they produce just as well as the Thunder that I planted last week. Got 10 seedlings. I'm going to plant 5 seedlings per row. I'm going to space them out normally at 60 centimeters. What I'm going to do is, and I'll show you, I'll take out a seedling and bring it closer. Yeah, big ripple. I'm going to be removing these lower flowers here, leaves, sorry, here, to make sure it's a nice clean stem. And what I'm going to be doing essentially is burying the soil, the plant up to this level. And so digging a reasonably sized hole, try to bring it down as deep as possible, and then backfilling it. So I've just planted that bed. Now I've got my 1 row of capsicums, 2 rows of tomatoes, and I just needed to give them a watering in now, and then put a bit of protection over, a bit of mesh over them just to protect them. And they should set it in quite well, especially this warm, overcast weather that we're having. It's really, really good for them. I'm going to put some snail pellets around, especially for the capsicums. I've got a real slug problem at the moment in my garden, and just need to protect the seedlings, so I'll add a little bit of slug pellets as well. And while I'm here, I just want to show you the tomatoes I planted last week, just give you an update on how they're going at the moment. And if you see my previous video, I planted 2 rows of 6 plants. The variety is called Thunder. This is my go-to variety that I plant every year. And just bringing you in, you can just see, look, absolutely amazing. They've doubled in size since last week. We've had some really warm weather in Sydney, mid 25 degrees, 25, 26 degrees. So they've done really, really well because of it, and they're going to fly. You know, in 4 weeks' time, I'll be definitely having to prune these tomatoes and staking them, just making sure that I've kept the water up on them. I've given them their first application of nitrogen fertilizer, just a little bit of power feed, or any liquid nitrogen fertilizer you can find will be fine. They do need a initial spray. I have started to see just a little bit of insect damage on some of the leaves, so a bit of spray of pyrethrum just to stay on top of the caterpillars. And yeah, tomatoes are doing absolutely amazing. These are going to look great, and in upcoming videos I will give you more of an update of how I'm treating these tomatoes, what fertilizers I'm going to be adding, and how I'm going to be staking and pruning these tomatoes, and hopefully show you my final produce, my final haul in mid-November. And before I wrap up this video, just going to give you an update on my brassica plantings. There's still a lot of winter veggies in my patch, and brassicas is one of them. I've got 3 plantings of broccoli, 2 plantings of cauliflower, and a planting of cabbage still to work through before the rest of my summer plantings go out. Over here behind me I have my 4th planting of broccoli, and this is planted on my north facing side of my patch, and I've got 20 plants here in total, and I am just starting to see the first heads show up in this bed, so looking really good. Glad it's starting to produce, and I should be eating and harvesting broccoli this time next week, so in about 7 days time. Really looking forward to clearing this bed, because I do want to plant, and I'm expecting to potentially either plant pumpkins here or zucchini. I'm just second guessing myself which one I should plant here. I might end up planting butternut pumpkins in this patch. Coming across to my 5th planting of broccoli. Again, this is in my main patch behind the lemon tree. Slightly shaded spot, but these ones are still doing really well. I've got again another 20 seedlings planted here. They will be ready to produce, I'm estimating, 2 weeks after the 4th planting gets harvested. And next to the 5th planting of broccoli, I got my 6th and last planting here, and these were planted about 4 weeks after these ones. I've still got a long way to go. I've got close, again, 20-25 seedlings in this spot. Expecting this one to be harvested in that mid to late October stage. And as I find out, as the temperature warms up, and this warm season variety Aurora tends to produce faster as the season warms up, so I'll be surprised if this isn't cleared here by early October. Over at my cauliflower patch, and I've still got 2 plantings of cauliflowers to work through. This is my 3rd planting. This was planted in, if I remember correctly, late June, and this is store-bought seeds. I wasn't able at the time to raise seedlings in my planting schedule, and so I got some nursery-bought seedlings. They're doing okay, but I'm not sure what's going on, and it seems to be some sort of disease starting to work through the plants. Not sure what it is, and you can just see it's worse in some areas than others. But what I will be doing is I will be treating with a little bit of copper oxychloride just to control whatever that is spread, because I don't want it to spread to my broccoli seedlings, or do I want to spread to my 4th planting of cauliflower, which is just over there. Now look, they're looking amazing. I'll bring you in closer. This is the last planting of cauliflower. These were planted 4 weeks ago. It is now, I would say, too late to plant cauliflower if you are in Sydney. Got 48 plants in total in this spot. Now I've had a few losses, no big deal, but these have been really responding to the weather, and I've given them their first nitrogen fertilizer side dress, and they've just really responded to that too. I planted them this late last year, and I was harvesting in November. I find this variety is quite resistant to bolting, so it should be able to produce a reasonable size head without bolting. And I'll see in about 2 months time whether I've overextended the season, whether I do get a crop or actually does bolt. But fingers crossed, I think they should be doing fine, especially with how fast they've been growing at the moment. Thank you very much everyone for joining me in this video. I really appreciate all the support, and I hope to see you in the next one.